Narrator laments the young crown prince. The black-haired man questions her presence while she pleads for silence to avoid discovery.
He suspects she is intoxicated, noting the smell of alcohol as she hushes him. Searching voices echo nearby as the man and maid look for the pair. She realizes the severity of being found together as they remain hidden.
He holds her securely against the wall.
The man finds the situation troublesome but decides to cooperate while she sees an opportunity.
She hopes a scandal will dissolve her engagement to the crown prince.
He notes their pursuers have left and prepares to move.
A sudden crunch sounds as he loses his footing. He shouts in surprise as he falls backward. They tumble together in a tangled heap. The pair land heavily on the floor.
He asks if she has been injured.
She offers her thanks while he requests that she move off of him.
He identifies her as Lady Minuet.
She hesitates before asking him for a favor.
She urges him to consider her request as an act of kindness.
A sudden gasp sounds as she leans in.
She kisses him abruptly, leaving him shocked and confused by her behavior. Confusion and pain cloud her fading thoughts.
She wonders if her current reality is merely a dream.
A soft blink sounds as she awakens. The woman cries out in joy while the blonde man calls to Minuet.
The maid and doctors celebrate her return to consciousness. Mika Eto recalls her former life as a workaholic designer.
Exhaustion from overworking led to her sudden collapse at her desk. Her career success ultimately cost her her life. She wonders if this is the afterlife as her new family thanks God for her recovery. The woman weeps with overwhelming relief. She asks who they are, causing the blonde man to react with shock. A formal medical explanation confirms her cardiac arrest. The doctor explains that temporary amnesia is a normal consequence of her condition. She decides to feign memory loss for the time being. Life continues in the sprawling palace. Her new body's natural frailty allows her to live without arousing suspicion.
She gradually adjusts to her new life as a noblewoman.
She ponders the fate of the original soul. She commits to her new identity as Minuet Levine. A quick click sounds as the door opens. She happily greets her personal maid, Rena.
Rena serves tea and sweets while expressing relief at her mistress's health.
Rena gazes at her with deep affection. Both find peace in the quiet afternoon recovery.
Rena becomes intensely determined to help her mistress regain her lost memories.
Assorted delicacies are prepared for tea.
Rena reflects on how long it has been since their last tea. A sharp creak sounds from the door. An elegant guest arrives in the room.
Minuet looks up with surprise at her visitor.
Lillian complains about being forced to attend tea and break her diet, though her mother insists she is already thin. The mother reminds Lillian that this is their first tea gathering since Minuet's recovery. Lillian reluctantly concedes to the request. The mother shifts the conversation, asking the father if he has settled a specific matter. The father hesitates before responding.
Minuet wonders about the mentioned matter.
The father confirms that he has handled the situation. He explains that news of her recovery reached the capital and prepares to deliver significant news. Minuet awaits the news with anticipation. The father reveals an imperial marriage proposal. A stunned silence fills the room.
Minuet reacts to the shocking news. Lillian expresses total disbelief that the imperial family wants to marry her sister.
The mother observes that Minuet has reached a suitable age for marriage.
Minuet questions her family's social standing relative to such a high-status proposal from royalty. While Lillian criticizes the stuffiness of political matches, Minuet begins to process the reality of the situation. The father notes the honor of the proposal, mentioning the emperor's long-standing fondness for Minuet. Minuet realizes this proposal could lead her to the throne.
She excitedly considers the luxury and leisure a royal life would offer.
She embraces her new royal potential. The scene shifts to the sprawling palace. A dark-haired man wakes the crown prince, informing him it's time to start the day. Prince Onyx awakens with a groan. The prince complains about the early hour while the servant insists on the morning schedule. The servant presents a news article he finds interesting, which the skeptical prince dismisses as likely nonsense. The two bicker playfully over the newspaper before the prince demands to see it. Vagon teases the prince's curiosity, prompting Onyx to address him by his full title to end the banter. Onyx scoffs at the sensationalist headline reporting on his own supposed engagement. Vagon highlights the intense public excitement surrounding the news of the royal marriage.
The prince tosses the paper aside.
Vagon defends the credibility of the reporting, suggesting there is truth behind the announcement. The prince is frustrated that he is the last to know about his own marriage plans. Onyx meets with his father, the emperor.
The emperor formally announces that a partner has been selected for the prince.
The emperor questions if his son has any personal objections or alternative choices. The emperor waits for his son's reaction. The Levine family crest is displayed. Narration explains that Countess Levine holds powerful connections as the sister of a neighboring emperor. The emperor explains that marrying the daughter of the Levine family provides essential political support.
Onyx cynically considers the political motivation behind his father's choice.
He wonders if his father is using this match to secure their legitimacy in future. Onyx dismisses the idea of affection, suspecting the marriage is merely financial leverage. Onyx taps his new dop.
He analyzes how the alliance would facilitate the import of magic stones and industrial growth.
The prince acknowledges the political benefits. The emperor laughs, noting his son's increasing alignment with cold royal pragmatism. Onyx remains bitter, viewing the arrangement as nothing more than a golden cage. Onyx acknowledges the kingdom's financial crisis. He reflects on his father's history of repeated business and political failures.
From a young age, Onyx has seen the consequences of these failures on their nation.
The black-haired man reflects on how marrying into the Levine family will provide the massive wealth his kingdom needs. He plans to use the funds to rebuild the country while questioning his subordinate about potential delays in magic stone imports.
He believes this political maneuver is the only way to finally liberate himself from his burdens. A vibrant bouquet of pink and red roses sits in a display. Minuet gazes at the flowers with wide eyes and asks if they are beautiful.
Rena beams and explains that the imperial family sent them specifically for the future crown princess.
Stunned, Minuet wonders if the prince truly sent all of these? Rena concludes that the crown prince must be an exceptionally generous and thoughtful man. A massive influx of luxurious gifts arrives at the estate the following day. A butler stands ready with a large formal scroll. He prepares to unveil a massive object covered by a white cloth. Rena excitedly guesses it must be a portrait, a thought that Minuet hesitantly agrees with. A hand reaches out to pull the fabric as a soft, rhythmic swish sounds through the air. The portrait is revealed, showing a young boy with dark hair and bright yellow eyes.
Minuet is paralyzed with confusion and horror at the sight of the child.
The butler presents the painting with a flourish, proudly displaying the image of the young boy.
Total disbelief washes over Minuet as she prays this is all just a terrible misunderstanding. She is appalled by the prospect of raising a child instead of finding a romantic partner.
She asks for clarification about the boy's identity, only for the butler to explain it is merely an old portrait of the prince.
The butler gushes about how the portrait captures the prince at his most adorable age.
A heavy sigh of relief escapes Minuet as she realizes her error. She tries to steady herself, hoping that her fear of a child marriage was unfounded. She recalls her former life and her new body, deciding that while she can handle reincarnation, she draws the line at marrying a child.
The butler interrupts her thoughts to announce that he has been instructed to deliver one more item.
A heavy, solid thud echoes as he sets down a large, ornate chest filled with colorful macarons. Seeing the sweets, Minuet collapses in despair, convinced she has been forced onto a childcare path.
She imagines herself being hauled away by a policeman for committing a crime against a minor. A newspaper article details how Minuet supposedly rejected the marriage by tossing a massive portrait out of her home.
Minuet is shocked and outraged by the ridiculous claims in the article. She complains about the nonsense while explaining she only took the portrait back to think things over. Lillian laughs behind her fan, wondering how the crown prince will react to such a scandalous report. A quick, sharp snap sounds as she closes her fan with practiced grace.
Thoughts swirl about the prince being the perfect catch, making a political match seem far more tolerable.
Minuet begins to express her actual hesitation to her sister.
She remains deeply troubled by the idea of trying to fall in love with someone who looks like a child.
The carriage comes to a halt at a grand building as a gentle, musical chime rings out.
Minuet is greeted as she enters Madame Minette's boutique, leaving her breathless with wonder. The scene shifts to the interior of the prestigious fashion house. Minuet admires the expensive handmade gowns, while a clerk promises to bring out several new options. Lillian scolds her sister for wandering and tells her to sit so they can select an elegant dress for the debutante ball. Minuet wonders if it is far too late for her to be making a social debut at her current age. Lillian reasons that they have no other choice because Minuet spent so much time bedridden. Lillian teases her sister, telling her not to look so depressed about the situation. She encourages Minuet, promising that her beauty will ensure she outshines every other lady at the event. Minuet feels a surge of confidence as she agrees it's time to choose a dress.
Lillian gestures toward the shopkeeper and requests that the selections be brought forward.
Minuet glows with happiness as she tries on an exquisite white lace gown.
Lillian gloats behind her fan, certain that their appearance will make them the center of attention at the ball. With the shopping complete, Lillian suggests they head into town for a relaxing tea. The two sisters enjoy a quiet afternoon together at an outdoor cafe. Lillian is delighted by the delicious sprek. A steady step sounds across the tiles. Minuet looks up at the unexpected newcomer. A silver-haired nobleman offers a polite bow. Minuet recognizes him as the earlier stalker. She remembers him peeking from the shadows. Lillian returns Lord Stryver's very polite greeting. Stryver calls their meeting a lucky encounter. He claims Lillian is priceless to him. Stryver asks about the other lady's identity. Lillian looks at him with deep skepticism. Stryver formally greets the famed Lady Minuet. Minuet senses immediate trouble brewing here. Lillian is internally furious at his indiscretion. Stryver quickly praises Lillian's unmatched beauty instead. He asks Lillian to follow him privately. He mentions obtaining a rare traveling merchant's gift. A confident smile crosses the man's face. Lillian decides to give him one last chance. Stryver leads Lillian away for a moment. Minuet feels lonely and quite envious tonight. Her father suggests a slow, careful engagement. Minuet's worries are far more personal now. Neighbors gossip about a child count nearby. Noblewomen discuss a desperate marriage dowry match. They mock a bride-turned-nurse's humiliating royal role. They laugh about bedchamber lullabies for children. Horror washes over the listening Lady Minuet. Gossips mention the father's constant gambling habits. Minuet is traumatized by their cruel mockery. She dreads being the young prince's nanny. Rumors claim the emperor sells secret information. The ladies mock the royal family's desperation. They whisper of a dark, broke palace. Minuet fears a penniless, child-led royal marriage. She realizes the impending financial collapse. Pure shock paralyzes the young blonde lady. She sees zero benefit in this marriage. Minuet refuses to accept such a fate. A striking adult man walks past her. Minuet is instantly captivated by his presence. Inspiration strikes her like a sudden bolt. The adult Prince Onyx appears incredibly radiant. Minuet vows to find a handsome adult. Her heart flutters with a newfound desire. She yearns for a truly handsome man. She signals to a passing cafe waitress. Minuet sends tea to the handsome stranger. The prince remains focused on his own table. Onyx tells the laughing Vagon to stop. Aegon apologizes, noting that public rejection is rough regardless of the political nature of the match, adding that he understands the prince's feelings. Aegon continues teasing, suggesting the count's daughter truly despised the match to throw a portrait, while Onyx groans in annoyance. News of the crown prince grabbing a councilman's collar spreads quickly through the press. Onyx threatens Aegon for his public presence, while the man laughs, acknowledging his current predicament. Aegon expresses concern over the excessive gossip and sympathy for the targeted count's daughter. Onyx blames the blue cicada for the reporting. Onyx criticizes a sleazy journalist, preferring he write about the Industrial Revolution, while Aegon argues that press coverage could garner council support, which the prince dismisses in favor of securing bank funding. Aegon notes Cecilia's unusual absence during the prince's outing. Aegon questions if Cecilia was shocked by the surprise proposal. Onyx denies any obligation to report his affairs. Aegon reminds Onyx that Cecilia is Pedrico's sister. Aegon warns against indulging the princess forever. Aegon suggests giving the princess her proper title. Onyx tells Aegon to stop talking.
Onyx highlights the Empire's dire financial state.
Aegon urges Onyx to show her attention.
Onyx questions Aegon's self-destructive lifestyle, causing a sudden, nervous pick sound to escape the man.
Aegon stammers as he feels the pressure.
A waitress delivers tea to the prince's table. Onyx spots Minuet Levine through the window.
He wonders why she sent the tea. Minuet worries her gesture was too cliché. She admits her total lack of courting experience.
Reflecting on her previous life of all-girls schools and endless work, Minuet vows to finally experience a decent romance.
Minuet is startled when Onyx stands up. Her heart races as their eyes meet.
Onyx questions why his rejecter is here. The prince prepares to approach her.
Minuet panics as he walks toward her.
Onyx asks if she ordered the tea. Minuet apologizes for being rude, but Onyx dismisses it, claiming her past actions were far worse than a simple charm.
Minuet is baffled by his hostile accusations.
Onyx asks if she enjoys toying with men. Realization suddenly dawns on the startled Vedi. Minuet connects his anger to the newspaper article. She vehemently denies the prince's harsh accusations.
Minuet flees as Onyx tries to stop her.
Onyx stands bewildered by her behavior.
Aegon mocks Minuet's naive appearance and strange gesture.
Aegon offers the prince his copy of the newspaper.
Aegon praises the beautiful illustration in the paper, suggesting it as a souvenir, but Onyx flatly refuses it.
Aegon understands why the town gossips about her beauty.
Onyx dismisses the town's madness as spring fever. Minuet collapses onto her bed in exhaustion. She rolls around, lamenting her ruined life.
Rena arrives with a massive stack of newspapers.
Minuet wonders how the press obtained information.
She surveys the overwhelming of coverage. Rena notes that gossipers have too much time.
Minuet focuses on her illustration in the paper.
Rena admits that while she hates the newspapers, she must concede that the illustration of the lady is exceptionally well drawn.
Minuet is baffled by the report, questioning why only her face appears and demanding to know where the crown prince is. Rena explains that drawing the royal family without permission is a crime, leaving Minuet to complain about the unfairness of it all. Despair overcomes Minuet as she clings to her maid, asking what she could have possibly done to deserve such a public mess.
Rena offers a gentle, reassuring smile as she reminds her lady that rumors are quickly forgotten and that once she marries the prince, her beauty will be famous throughout the empire.
A single tear wells in Minuet's blue eyes as she processes the weight of her situation.
A sudden realization strikes the lady as she notes that because she hasn't officially rejected him, the engagement is still technically valid.
Minuet panics over her impossible dilemma, stuck between a royal marriage or being branded as a social outcast for rejecting the throne.
She ponders whether to choose a moment of immediate pain or a lifetime of suffering, while her maid looks on in total confusion.
The scene shifts to the Grand Imperial Assembly Hall, where a high-stakes meeting is underway.
Amidst the serious proceedings, Prince Onyx finds himself distracted, wondering about the lady's strange attitude after she seemingly turned him down.
He shakes his head, telling himself to stop thinking about the woman and focus on his duties.
Onyx touches his lapel pin and reminds himself that he must stay focused for his presentation on magic stones.
The Emperor sits at the head of the table, asking Onyx for a progress report on securing international magic stone reserves. Onyx explains that imports will be secured soon, though a councilman argues it may be too early to finalize partners before the stone's utility is proven. Onyx remains calm as he details how they have successfully completed the second phase of experimental testing.
The Emperor strokes his beard, questioning if this new technology will truly improve national productivity.
Onyx prepares to support his claims with the exact data required by the council.
He explains the revolutionary shift that magic-powered industrial machines will bring to their production lines.
A visual projection shows how a magic-powered spinning machine can reduce working time to a fraction of its original length. Onyx concludes that this massive increase in output will inevitably lead the empire into a significant trade surplus.
Documents and gold coins illustrate the prince's plan to revitalize the crown's failing finances. He notes that the crown will maintain total imperial control over all magic stone technology.
After the meeting, Viscount Berkshire praises Onyx for the success of the presentation while the prince remains pensive.
Onyx admits that his long nights spent on the blueprints were worthwhile as the two men walk through the palace.
A strikingly beautiful woman with long red hair and bright green eyes watches them approach.
Cecilia offers a deep, formal curtsy as she greets the prince and the viscount, though Onyx notes her presence in the hall is unusual.
She claims she was simply in the area on business and decided to stop by to offer her greetings.
Berkshire teases her with a wide grin, suggesting he would have gone to meet her had he known she was coming.
Cecilia shifts her attention back to the prince, asking if the two of them plan to attend the upcoming ball.
Berkshire explains that Onyx is scheduled to deliver the celebratory speech at the event and assumes she will also be there.
He sighs, complaining about how he is forced to work day and night thanks to a certain person's demands.
Berkshire offers Cecilia his congratulations on her impending social debut.
Cecilia brushes back a lock of her hair, thanking him politely for the kind words. She turns to Onyx with a blush, asking if he would be willing to be her first dance partner tomorrow. Onyx politely declines, explaining that his schedule only allows for the speech before he must return home. Cecilia grabs his arm with a sudden, desperate grip, questioning if his refusal is because he is getting engaged.
Onyx tells her to stop, but Cecilia's eyes fill with tears as she calls out to him.
The princess clutches at her dress, wondering if she can find the courage to speak her mind.
She asks if he is distancing himself because of her brother Pedrico or simply because they are cousins, reminding him that imperial family members often marry.
Onyx looks at her with sincere regret, explaining that while he cares for her, his feelings are not romantic.
Berkshire tries to soften the blow, explaining that royal marriages are defined by duty rather than affection.
Cecilia's thoughts reveal her heartbreak as she wonders if his rejection is truly because he has fallen for Lady Minuet. A large, warm hand is placed gently on Cecilia's head to comfort her. Onyx looks down at her with a soft expression, asking if his affirmation would truly make her feel better. He speaks her name gently, trying to maintain their bond despite his lack of romantic interest. Cecilia looks away in sorrow, admitting she fears he will hate her if she continues to be persistent.
Onyx offers her a faint, supportive smile, hoping to mend the tension between them. Cecilia resolves that she is no longer a little girl who knows nothing of the world as she prepares to face the ball.
Berkshire watches the princess with a look of quiet concern as she begins to walk away.
The red-haired woman asks for a tea party once tomorrow's ball is over, hoping for another meeting. Onyx declines, telling the lady she should invite a man more suitable than someone like him.
Clenching her dress, Cecilia vows to use any means necessary to make Onyx notice her as a sister. The debutante ball begins in the glamorous grand hall of the palace amidst glowing evening lights.
Noblewomen gossip about the empire's flourish and wonder where the lady of the hour has gone.
Noblemen wait in anticipation, believing the mystery lady will arrive soon to grace the event.
Liliane and Minuet make their grand entrance, stunning the room with their elegant presence.
A collective murmur ripples through the crowd as the two noble sisters walk through the hall. Watching from afar, Cecilia notes that Minuet has finally shown her face after missing her own debut. Regina seethes behind her fan, resenting that the Levine sisters are stealing the spotlight she wanted. Regina and her companion discuss a scandalous article published in the Blue Cicada newspaper. Bubbles of gossip question if Minuet's frail health would ever allow her to bear a prince. The crowd worries about the line of succession after the prince proposed to such a weak girl. Liliane walks past as people whisper about the nerve she had to refuse a royal proposal. Greeting the room with a charming smile, Liliane politely addresses the gathered nobles. Regina and her friend watch Liliane's approach with looks of forced politeness and judgment. Regina hides her true feelings behind a fan, offering Liliane a hollow compliment on her beauty.
Liliane returns the sentiment, telling the group of ladies that they all look gorgeous today.
Liliane formally introduces her sister, Minuet Levine, hoping the other ladies will be good friends.
Regina laughs off her prior knowledge of Minuet's details, claiming it was just simple awareness.
Liliane notes the deep interest everyone has in her sister, despite her recent recovery from illness. Liliane mocks Regina for having so much free time that she reads vulgar newspaper articles. Offended by the sharp insult, Regina's companion demands that Liliane speak her mind more clearly.
Regina warns that using such vulgar speech will completely ruin Liliane's debut into high society.
A confident and knowing smile remains on Liliane's face as she faces her critics. The purple-dressed lady asks if the rumor of Liliane turning down the crown prince is actually true.
The group wonders if Liliane has a secret lover, causing both sisters to break out in cold sweat.
Liliane calls out the crowd for their sudden change in attitude regarding outdated political marriages. Liliane hints that a certain young lady's heart would be broken if her sister married the crown prince.
From the background, Cecilia glares at the sisters with an intense and silent fury. Blushing with embarrassment, Cecilia begs the group to stop talking about the prince at their debut.
Lillian watches Cecilia's reaction and suspects the Duke's daughter has feelings for the crown prince. Lillian wonders why the prince would propose to her when such a lovely girl like Cecilia exists.
The two sisters stand together in a field of roses as their appearance at the ball concludes.
A soft murmur fills the air beneath the grand chandelier as the noblemen gather in their own lounge. Clenching her dress, Cecilia fuming inwardly at the humiliation she felt in front of Lillian.
Cecilia bows her head and apologizes for being rude, struggling to maintain her composure. Lillian and Minuet take their leave from the group, walking away with their heads held high.
Lillian scoffs at Cecilia's attempt to act elegant after her previous outburst.
Lillian scolds her sister, urging Minuet to get her act together so other women cannot interfere.
A group of noblemen relaxes around a spread of fruit and drinks in a private room.
The men recognize Minuet by her sister's side and recall the rumors surrounding the count's daughter.
A man considers asking Minuet to dance, but Rowley claims he is loyal to Lady Lillian.
Rowley declares his determination to marry Lillian, ignoring the doubts of his companions.
The men joke that a marriage to Lillian would be the only way for the Stryver family to rise in rank.
Rowley boasts that Lillian is already smitten with him and brags about the effort he put in. Chibi Rowley looks at a newspaper clipping of Minuet, amazed that she had the nerves to show up.
Teased about his low rank, Chibi Rowley snaps at his friends to shut their mouths.
A man turns to the sitting prince and asks how his own engagement with the girl is going. Onyx sips his drink and coldly tells them that his marriage has nothing to do with any of them.
Aegon notes the prince's extreme irritation and comments that as nobles, they naturally care about the country's future.
Aegon advises the prince to accept such a rare beauty gracefully. Onyx dismisses physical appearance as a fleeting layer of skin that will eventually vanish. The prince wonders if her rejection stemmed from a sense of pride in her own beauty. He questions if her refusal was meant to declare the imperial house beneath her. A lewd comment about the lady's neckline comes from the drunken man.
The lady's elegant necklace rests against her collarbone. Onyx's disgust grows as he realizes how vulgar his companion has become.
Onyx commands the man to stop, but Grief continues to boast about the prince's luck in securing a seductive wife.
Grief questions why the marriage to Lady Minuet hasn't proceeded as planned, while Aegon tries to quiet him. Onyx's gaze turns lethal as he tells the man to stop drinking immediately. A sudden, sharp hiccup escapes the noble's throat as he reacts to the prince's intense glare. The discussion turns to the impossibility of facing a past wife or finding a new one before next year's ball. Grief protests that his words are unrelated to the current situation while shrinking back in fear.
Onyx seizes the man's collar and threatens him, punctuating his anger as a loud crash echoes through the room. The man groans in pain with a sharp ugh as he is violently shoved onto the furniture. Aegon notes that he had warned the man as the prince walks away in a cold rage.
Gossiping ladies whisper behind their fans at the grand ball.
Lady Lillian demonstrates her exquisite skill on the dance floor with a graceful partner.
Noblewomen praise Lillian as the undisputed star of the debutante ball, noting her mother's pride. A scandalous rumor has spread like wildfire throughout the kingdom. The eldest daughter, in a truly audacious act, has reportedly rejected a royal proposal. The audacity! The implications are monumental, threatening to unravel diplomatic alliances and potentially plunge the realm into chaos. Rumors spread that her lack of education is due to a long-term illness, leading to questions about her suitors. The gossips mockingly wonder who would want a wife without any musical talent or proper training. They worry that marrying her would result in the burden of educating both the wife and their future children. Minuet overhears the cruel words and sweats nervously, her composure beginning to slip. She feels the weight of the social mockery as metaphorical eyes glare at her from the shadows. A waiter offers the lady a tray of drinks as she looks for an escape.
A quick, fluid motion follows as her hand reaches for a glass of red wine.
Minuet regrets her attendance and drinks with a quick gulp to numb the sting of the gossips. She asks for directions to the terrace to escape the stifling atmosphere of the ballroom. The lady resolves to walk out of the hall on her own terms, leaving the judgmental crowd behind.
Cecilia pouts alone, longing for her first dance with her brother Onyx.
Her mother advises her to be more welcoming to prospective suitors to avoid appearing rude.
Cecilia's eyes light up with recognition as she spots someone in the distance.
She greets Aegon and admits she was hoping he would keep her company instead of the absent prince.
Aegon wonders if the prince has already decided to return home early. He performs a gallant gesture, pressing a respectful kiss to her hand. Cecilia reminds him of their history together as her former dance instructor.
Her expression hardens as she directs her attention elsewhere with a sense of urgency.
She commands a servant to locate the crown prince before the second waltz begins. Minuet steps out into the cool air of the terrace to clear her head.
She pauses as she thinks she hears the mention of the crown prince nearby, a tiny hiccup escaping her lips.
The lady peeks through the architectural doorway toward the moonlit balcony. She finds Onyx standing on the balcony and is struck by how fine he looks in the moonlight. Minuet realizes he's the same handsome man from the coffee shop and wonders if their meeting is fate. She vows to leave her dull past behind and embrace a passionate whirlwind romance with him. Emboldened by her social disgrace, she decides she no longer has anything to lose and will face him.
She resolves to keep moving forward to win the love she desires.
Onyx notices her presence and calls out to her as he leans on the stone railing.
The prince's eyes widen as he recognizes her and speaks the name Minuet Levine.
Minuet blushes with a soft smile.
Minuet asks if he remembers her, while Onyx tells her not to get too close and questions her strange behavior, leading Minuet to wonder if they have truly met before.
Minuet has a sudden realization while Onyx continues to stare in complete confusion.
Minuet claims they met at a coffee shop as Onyx hides his face and insists he has no idea what she is talking about.
A sudden, quick touch startles the prince as her hand reaches out. Minuet leans in and begins to whisper something personal to him. Onyx is baffled by her sudden change in attitude and behavior.
Onyx orders her to remove her hands, but Minuet is distracted by how handsome he looks in his anger. Palace staff call out for the crown prince, searching the halls for his location.
Minuet expresses panic at the thought of the crown prince being nearby and worries about a potential disaster if they were to meet.
Minuet drags him toward a corner as Onyx questions her erratic movements.
She urges him to keep quiet to avoid being caught while he grows suspicious of her motives. Onyx reflects on the humiliation of her marriage rejection and his failure to understand her true character. Onyx demands to know what Lady Minuet thinks she is doing. He questions if her rejection was a lie or if she simply treats him like a toy.
Minuet begins a question as Onyx waits for her to continue.
Onyx asks if they know each other and how long she'll feign ignorance, much to her surprise. Onyx notes her frequent palace visits and asks if she is drunk before nearly identifying himself as the country's prince.
Hearing the searchers, Onyx decides to maintain the charade for a moment, and Minuet quickly agrees.
A sudden, sharp twist sounds as their feet tangle on the floor.
Minuet gasps in shock as they both lose their balance.
A sharp escapes Onyx as they collide. They land together on the floor as Onyx checks if she is injured.
Minuet thanks him while he stares at her in stunned silence.
Minuet finds his bewilderment cute, acknowledging the irony of hitting on the man she rejected.
Onyx scolds her lack of shame and tells her to move away immediately.
Minuet realizes this might be her perfect chance to change the narrative.
Minuet plans to start a rumor about another man while Onyx fumes at her brazen declaration in front of her suitor.
Onyx reflects on his humiliation and his need for her family's wealth to restore the empire.
Minuet leans close to him and begins to speak softly about her feelings.
Minuet looks down at him with a serious and focused gaze.
The image of the prince is reflected in her bright eyes as she looks at him.
Onyx asks why she is telling him these things, addressing her as Lady Minuet. Minuet tells him that she has a specific request to make.
A firm sounds as she grabs hold of his attire.
Minuet asks him for a date to help her situation, leaving Onyx completely shocked and confused.
Onyx wonders what she's up to now, while Minuet calls the situation ridiculous. A heavy gulp sounds as the prince reacts to her overwhelming closeness.
A soft moi sounds as they share a sudden, intimate kiss. Onyx is left stunned and breathless, wondering what is wrong with the woman before him.
The scene shifts to the opulent exterior of the family mansion under a bright sky.
Rena calls out to her lady as she enters the grand bathroom. Minuet wakes up disoriented and asks if she is truly back in her room.
Rena scolds her for drinking too much and expresses shock that she returned home in the imperial carriage.
Minuet is horrified at the mention of the imperial carriage and sits up in panic. The maid confirms someone must have provided her transport back to the estate.
Minuet tries to recall leaving the ballroom, but realizes she has no memory of what happened next.
Minuet hopes she didn't cause a scene while Rena asks if she drank so much that her memory is gone.
Minuet looks pale and hungover as she sits in bed, dreading the truth.
Rena warns that riding with a bad person would have been a disaster for her reputation. Minuet finds the fact that she returned in the imperial carriage scarier than being carried home by a random man.
A sudden, loud click sounds as Lillian bursts into the room calling for her sister.
Lillian demands an explanation for her sister's sudden disappearance and her return in the imperial carriage. A sharp rustle sounds as Lillian grabs the newspaper, worried that journalists may have already published a story about Minuet. Lillian discovers a more interesting article declaring her the queen of the season.
A muffled murmur sounds from outside as Minuet and Lillian wonder what the fuss is about.
Lillian's eyes widen as she recognizes the source of the commotion outside.
A sharp clack sounds as Rena looks through the window while Minuet asks what is wrong.
A sudden bang sounds as Minuet peers out to see Rena telling a crowd of men to wait their turn. Rena identifies a member of the Hunt family among the crowd of persistent onlookers.
Rena yells at the men below for disrespectfully stealing glances at the ladies on the second floor.
A light flutter sounds as Lillian decides to head out first, commenting on the burden of being popular.
A series of quick taps sound as Lillian rushes away down the hall.
Rena sighs, noting that the debutante queen is inevitably surrounded by many persistent suitors.
Minuet expresses shock that such a large crowd came specifically for Lillian.
Rena explains that the title of debutante queen draws intense attention from all the sons of nobility.
Rena mentions how common it is for gentlemen to wait for a glimpse or send messengers with love letters.
Rena worries that other debutantes might be resentful since they haven't received a single letter themselves.
Minuet looks devastated as Rena stammers out a frantic apology, realizing she accidentally insulted her lady's own situation.
Minuet reflects on the reality of being overlooked despite once being proposed to by the crown prince. She acknowledges that it is no wonder other girls feel resentment toward her, considering her history and current goals. Minuet admits her head is a total mess as she looks down at her attire.
Rena is surprised when Minuet announces she is going out for fresh air despite the crowd in the garden.
Minuet decides to bypass the fuss by using the back exit. A rhythmic tapping sounds as Minuet descends the stairs, feeling like she has failed her duty as a noble lady.
Flowers bloom quietly in the garden sunlight as the scene shifts.
A peaceful garden path stretches out into the distance.
Minuet lets out a long sigh as she wanders through the estate grounds.
She stops and wonders when and how she ended up in this unfamiliar area.
She finds a rustic wooden gate covered in ivy. A creaking groan sounds as Minuet decides to take a peek inside. Her eyes sparkle with wonder as she lets out a soft gasp. A hidden trail leads through lush, wild greenery into a secluded spot.
Minuet looks out over a beautiful, overgrown area of the estate.
She is amazed by the wild weeds and uneven pond, finding the abandoned garden perfectly artistic. Minuet looks around the quiet space as she begins to explore. A soft rustle sounds as she prepares to sit down on the grass. Minuet decides it's fine to soil her dress just once since she found such a perfect hideaway. Inspired by her past life as a designer, she decides to personally renovate the spot into a beautiful garden. She pauses to consider how she will draw blueprints without a computer. She spots a perfect branch nearby to use as a cawing tool. A quick swish sounds as she reaches out and picks up the stick.
A sharp clap sounds as she smacks her hands together with a plan.
She begins sketching elaborate floor plans and designs into the soft dirt. Minuet feels a sense of clarity now that she has returned to her familiar design work. She realizes she needs to return home to fetch a pen and proper paper for her project. A series of soft thuds sound as she carefully places rocks around her dirt drawings to protect them.
Minuet stops to realize that no one is likely to visit such a remote, hidden place anyway.
Water ripples gently in the sunlight of the abandoned garden stream. Minuet reflects on how quickly 10 days have passed since she began her secret project. Minuet decides to move one final rock before finishing her work for the day.
Minuet considers altering her dress for better movement as Rena's voice warns her about getting dirty.
Minuet looks nervous as she imagines the maid Rena continuing to nag her incessantly.
A soft rustle sounds as she prepares her protective gear.
Minuet triumphantly reveals a large apron she brought to keep her dress clean today.
A firm tug sounds as she ties the apron and prepares for the task.
Minuet strains with effort while trying to budge a massive, stubborn rock. She refuses to give up, fueled by the memory of her previous identity's determination. A sharp escapes her as the rock shifts, causing her to fall back with a cry.
A dull thud sounds as Minuet lands on the ground, nursing her minor aches.
Two unfamiliar maids easily hoist the rock and ask Minuet where it should be placed.
Minuet looks up in shock, wondering who the newcomers are.
A woman in a dark hat asks for her hand, offering help to get up.
A soft rustle sounds as Minuet takes the woman's hand and offers her thanks.
The woman asks why Minuet is in her garden, surprising Minuet, who thought it was abandoned. The woman explains that even abandoned land would technically remain imperial property.
Minuet awkwardly agrees that she has no rebuttal for that point.
Minuet panics internally, fearing she will be forced to undo all of her hard work.
The dirt on her dress serves as clear evidence of her secret gardening activities.
The woman asks for Minuet's name, correctly guessing her noble status. Minuet introduces herself, leading the woman to recognize her as the Levine family's eldest daughter.
The woman notes rumors of Minuet being bedridden and lacking the stamina for such labor.
A quick swish sounds as the woman turns away in quiet contemplation.
She explains the garden's neglect happened during her absence, then identifies herself as Violet, wife of Grand Duke Crowley.
Minuet is stunned to learn she is speaking with the Grand Duke's wife.
She realizes she has accidentally trespassed on the property of a very high-ranking noble.
Minuet is overwhelmed by the sudden revelation of the woman's identity.
Violet wonders why Minuet is working all alone without a single maid to accompany her. Minuet debates with herself whether to tell the truth about her secret project.
Violet's gaze drifts over the garden, marveling at how a neglected space became so beautiful.
Minuet timidly confesses that she was the one responsible for the garden's transformation.
Violet is amazed by her solo effort, while Minuet decides to be completely honest. Minuet offers a sincere apology for tending the garden without the owner's permission.
A tight squeeze sounds as Minuet braces herself for an inevitable scolding.
Instead of a reprimand, Violet officially asks Minuet to continue taking care of the garden.
Violet offers to assign maids to assist with the labor, asking if Minuet can accept.
Minuet asks if Violet is truly certain about leaving such a big responsibility to her.
Violet notes Minuet's apparent skill, but worries if asking such work of a noblewoman is impolite.
Minuet joyfully accepts the offer, eager to continue her work in the garden.
Violet promises to provide proper payment and any necessary supplies Minuet might require.
A sudden shout sounds as Rena calls for her lady from the balcony.
Rena frantically searches the estate grounds, wondering where Lady Minuet has disappeared to. Other servants note Minuet's increased frequency of walks, speculating on her change in behavior.
A quick rustle sounds as a maid presents a new article to her colleague.
The staff are outraged by a tabloid article labeling Minuet as a leftover and unwanted lady. The maids are moved to tears by the cruel and baseless rumors attacking their lady's character.
A white feather quill rests against a floral background.
A soft clink sounds as a hand dips the quill into an inkwell.
A rhythmic scratch sounds as Minuet writes at her desk while Rena watches in admiration.
Rena is deeply impressed by the incredible ideas being written by the author.
Several days have passed since Minuet began her work in the Crowley Garden, and she has now transitioned to entering through the main gate.
Remarking on the transformation of the garden, Minuet expresses satisfaction with the progress as Charlotte encourages them to maintain their momentum. Reflecting on her previous life's obsession with results, Minuet finds that the small, everyday improvements she achieves now feel like genuine miracles. As the golden-haired countess continues her work in the revitalized garden, a delivery man arrives to announce that her ordered flower pots have finally been delivered. Focus remains on the ground as multiple sets of feet move across the sunlit, tiled courtyard. Setting down a large container, the man fulfills the delivery while Minuet admires that the items are exactly as she had envisioned. Presenting a detailed garden sketch, Minuet asks Charlotte for her opinion on the arrangement, and the maid agrees that the plan looks lovely. Minuet apologizes for the extra work, but Charlotte dismisses the concern as she reflects on how much brighter the mansion feels since the Grand Duke's passing.
Charlotte notes the softening of Lady Violet's demeanor around the young lady, just as the elegant dark-haired woman arrives to suggest Minuet take a tea break.
A worker calls out to gain Lady Minuet's attention as she rests in the courtyard. The man informs her that Mr. Miller is waiting by the pond with the completed artificial water lilies, prompting a joyous reaction from Minuet. Amused by the mention of an important visitor, Lady Violet encourages Minuet to go check on the delivery and suggests they have their tea at a later time.
Giving her thanks, Minuet promises a quick return as she excitedly dashes toward the pond.
Watching her guests depart, Lady Violet muses on the unusual sight of a high-born lady running with such abandon through a garden.
The scene shifts as Minuet's energetic run is followed by the graceful, calm walk of her sister. Spotting Minuet from a distance, Lillian pauses in confusion to wonder why her sister is present at the mansion. Lillian formally greets Lady Violet, who warmly observes that the young woman has matured into a very fine lady since their last meeting.
A decorative teacup rests on a saucer during a quiet moment of transition.
Sitting for tea, Lillian explains that she hurried over upon hearing of Violet's return, though she expresses surprise that her sister arrived before her.
Lillian inquires about Violet's health and offers her condolences regarding the news of the Grand Duke's recent passing.
Reassuring her guest, Lady Violet takes a sip of tea and confirms that she is doing perfectly fine.
A sharp focus on Lady Violet's golden eye suggests deep contemplation.
Violet mentions her relief at being back in the Empire near her brother, the Emperor, before turning the conversation back to Lillian's recent activities.
Lady Violet confesses that she has missed having someone to talk to since the death of Countess Janssen and asks Lillian to share her stories.
A maid carries a stack of newspapers, noting that despite the constant high society headlines, Lady Violet rarely bothers to read them.
Expressing her disdain, Violet asserts that information found on scraps of paper is inherently untrustworthy and unworthy of her attention.
Violet sips her tea while explaining her lack of interest in sensationalist writing meant only to damage reputations for profit.
Lillian confidently offers to be Violet's source of information, reminding her that she was crowned the queen of this year's debutante ball. Curiosity piqued, Lillian asks what her usually shy and reclusive sister could possibly be doing at the Grand Duchess's mansion. When Violet reveals that Minuet has been assisting with garden maintenance, Lillian is visibly taken aback by the unexpected news. Lillian finds it bizarre that her unassuming sister is performing manual labor elsewhere, while Violet remarks on what a lovely person Minuet is. Lillian agrees, but wonders aloud why her sister is so opposed to a marriage with the Crown Prince, considering them a perfect match. Stunned by the mention of a potential marriage, Lady Violet asks why Onyx's name was suddenly brought into the conversation. Pausing with her cup, Violet asks if Lillian is truly unaware of the ongoing situation. A close-up of Violet's eye reveals her sudden shock as she whispers her disbelief at the revelation. Lady Violet stares intensely at a newspaper report, realizing that the scandalous articles she ignored were actually about Minuet. Back at the pond, the worker presents a floating lily, explaining that it performs exactly as requested, much to Minuet's delight. The man credits Minuet's precise instructions for the success, calling her the one who is truly impressive. A child on the cart jokes about his father being intimidated by Minuet's thoroughness, earning a playful scolding from the man.
Minuet laughs, wondering if she was perhaps too obsessive with the details, but the man quickly reassures her.
A bright, joyful laugh escapes Minuet as Charlotte approaches her with a heavy pouch of coins.
Offering a final payment, Minuet tells the man she looks forward to working with him again, as he accepts with humble gratitude.
In a playful exchange, Charlotte insists the man take the generous payment as a token of the Grand Duchess's sincerity despite his protests.
Holding a tray of lilies, Minuet admires the pond and reflects on how it captures the essence of Monet's famous paintings.
Looking at the quiet, blooming garden, Minuet contemplates the serene beauty of a space left untouched by others.
Narrative text poses a final thought on just how beautiful such a tranquil scene would be.
Charlotte's call breaks Minuet's concentration as the maid approaches her from behind.
The maids offer to lighten Minuet's load by carrying the supplies, while a figure approaches from the sunlit distance.
Onyx walks calmly through the lush garden greenery toward the group. The narrative concludes by noting that the name mentioned previously brought to mind an entirely different person. The prince repeats her name pensively.
Narrative text notes that even men who were warned to avoid Minuet could not deny her extraordinary beauty.
Onyx wonders why his right hand feels so agitated following the commotion at the debutante ball. Recalling Grief's mockery, the prince wonders if his irritation stems from the truth of their loveless and unofficial engagement.
He questions his own anger while Grief continues to tease him about why he cares so much about his ramblings. Onyx assumes his frustration comes from the impudent way the noble lady acted toward him while she was drunk.
The prince lets out a weary sigh. Onyx admits she was bold and beautiful, finding it irritating that he fell for her antics.
He blames a momentary paralysis on the mixture of strawberry wine and whiskey he consumed.
The prince jokingly considers passing a law.
Charlotte offers to carry the box for her lady, but Minuet kindly refuses, noting that her maid already has plenty of luggage to handle.
Onyx speaks her full name aloud.
Onyx watches Minuet from afar, dismissing her as a pathetic social climber who bought her way into the royal circle.
The lady begins to wobble instantly.
He has a sinking feeling she will fall.
Onyx wonders if she is faking a collapse based on a dating guide for modern women he once read.
Chibi Onyx reflects on the trend of free love among young nobles.
He notes that while other ladies are predictable, Minuet Levine seems remarkably different. Recalling rules about taking the lead in relationships, Onyx views her attitude as a romance novel cliché.
He wonders if he should acknowledge her investigative dedication.
Onyx suspects she might throw herself at him to mimic a predictable romance novel opening.
Minuet notices the prince and greets him with a cheerful blush and a warm hello.
Onyx questions if she really thinks she can target the crown prince with such a scripted scenario.
The prince tries to excuse himself while thinking that she is quite slow on the uptake.
Minuet looks bewildered as he speaks. She trips as a startled "ah" escapes her.
Minuet flails as she loses her bounds.
A loud crash sounds as the box of flowers hits the ground.
Onyx instinctively catches her, much to their mutual and sudden shock.
The prince's face turns bright red. Chibi visuals illustrate Rule 2 about using physical contact and being caught by the waist to deepen feelings.
Onyx realizes he fell for a cliché romance novel tactic that Cecilia used to recite to him. He resents his ingrained manners for forcing him to catch her in such a predictable way.
The prince admits these fairy tales might be based on actual facts after all.
Minuet startles the prince by shouting for him to get out of her way as she rushes toward her fallen flowers. She frets over a fallen flower on the ground.
Charlotte rushes to her lady's side while Minuet frets over her ruined flowers and wonders if they should call their partner back.
Someone approaches the group on foot.
Minuet greets the prince again with a bright smile while he notes his own presence in the area.
She asked him with a hopeful expression if he remembers her from their previous meeting.
Onyx curtly confirms that he does.
Minuet thanks him for the help as he tries to leave, leading Onyx to conclude she is perfectly executing a modern woman's strategy.
She blushes as she introduces herself.
Onyx feels a strange intoxication rising as he looks at her smiling eyes.
A close-up focuses on her smile.
He finds himself fixated on her expression.
The prince determines that her wicked smile is the real problem.
Onyx turns away, calling her a brazen prankster in his mind.
Minuet reacts with a sudden look of urgency.
Onyx walks away, feeling he has fallen into an inescapable trap.
He wonders if her performance in this clumsy scenario was simply that convincing. The two stand together beneath the vast, clear sky of the royal garden.
Minuet points out that they are still strangers to one another, while Onyx coldly calculates her value as a tool for the treasury and an heir to the throne. A long, weary breath escapes the prince's lips as he remains silent. Her eyes widen in a moment of realization as she finally learns that his name is Onyx.
He offers a formal, distant dismissal as he bids her a final farewell.
Minuet watches from the grass as the prince turns his back and walks away.
She clutches her flower and smiles to herself, cherishing the fact that they have finally met again.
Minuet approaches a blonde gardener to ask if the man who just passed through visits this area often.
The young man looks back at her with a look of pure confusion, repeating her description of a gentleman in disbelief.
He pauses for a moment, scratching his head as he considers the lady's strange question.
The gardener realizes she's asking about the crown prince and wonders how a lady of her status could refer to him so casually.
A radiant and triumphant glow surrounds the lady as she holds her prize.
The scene shifts back to the sprawling, opulent grandeur of the family mansion. A brush pulls through long golden hair as a maid asks her lady to be completely honest with her. Minuet looks toward the mirror and feigns ignorance, asking her maid what she could possibly mean. The servant continues her work while pressing for details on where the lady has been disappearing to lately. The maid remarks that things would be easier if her lady were more like Lillian, causing Minuet to look away in quiet hurt. Noticing the tension, the servant quickly retracts her statement and tries to move past the awkward comparison.
She looks down in regret, remembering when her lady's only wish was to walk and feeling guilty for being so thoughtless.
Rena asks if something wonderful happened today as she notices the lady's cheerful humming. Minuet claims nothing is going on, while Rena secretly wonders what could possibly make her so excited within these walls. The maid asks if looking at the garden has truly become that entertaining and probes for her lady's exact destination today. A bead of sweat rolls down Minuet's face as she stammers out a vague excuse about the west side of the estate.
She dreads the idea of her maid finding out about her secret work in the Grand Duchess's garden, fearing a relentless lecture.
Rena warns that many men looking for her sister are not true gentlemen, expressing concern for her lady's extreme innocence.
Minuet is confused as the maid explains that some men are merely useless pretenders looking to steal a family title.
The maid warns that being seen with such a man would ruin her royal engagement, unaware that the lady is thinking of Onyx himself.
Minuet begins to panic as she realizes she never asked for his family name and starts to doubt his noble status.
She asks if scammers usually hide their identity by only giving a first name, confirming her fears about her mystery man.
Rena confirms it is a classic trick, describing how they use expensive jewelry and gold to dazzle and deceive unsuspecting women.
The maid explains that real high-ranking nobles dress with modest dignity and urges her lady to avoid any man who is overdressed.
She prepares to reveal the most common way these deceitful men try to climb the social ladder.
A sudden shock hits the lady as Rena declares that these men target innocent noblewomen who know nothing of the world.
A new day begins as a ray of sunlight pierces through the clouds above the palace. The crown prince walks through the estate courtyard while intently reviewing a stack of documents. He looks over the latest reports regarding the magic stone business and the influence of the second prince's faction.
Chibi Onyx scoffs at the childish names used in noble politics and feels a twinge of embarrassment over his own past.
He gazes out at the garden and muses on the life of freedom he once dreamed of before his royal duties took hold. His mind wanders back to the moment he caught Minuet in his arms, the memory lingering in the back of his mind.
He wonders why he played along with a woman who was clearly pretending to be ignorant of his true identity.
His thoughts are suddenly interrupted by a sharp, urgent cry telling him to watch out. Onyx stops in his tracks as he spots Minuet approaching him in a stunning, deep blue gown.
She points toward his feet in a panic as a sudden, sharp clatter sounds beneath him.
Shards of porcelain and scattered leaves lie on the ground at the prince's feet. Minuet drops to the ground to inspect the damage, while Onyx wonders how she keeps appearing in his path.
The prince is left speechless by the sheer dedication of a woman who never stops weaving such elaborate scenarios.
He offers a brief, begrudging apology for the accident as he stands over her.
He feels a growing sense of shame for being dragged into her antics and resolves to avoid making any further mistakes.
Onyx turns his gaze away, his expression hardening as he prepares to leave her behind once again.
Minuet stops the prince from leaving.
Onyx wonders if she ever learned proper etiquette.
She laments the loss of rare porcelain. The prince offers to pay for the damage. Minuet insists that money isn't the issue.
Onyx notes that merchants usually serve nobles.
Minuet celebrates her successful meeting with him.
She reflects on her past life's influence.
Minuet claims responsibility for the garden's design.
Onyx deduces the Grand Duchess has returned.
He questions why she performs manual labor.
The prince remains skeptical of her claims.
He doubts a lady would ruin her dress.
Onyx notices her dress is genuinely soiled. He confirms her identity as a Count Dyer. Onyx finds her casual attitude toward work baffling.
He considers her potential as a future princess.
Minuet asks if he truly intends to compensate her. Onyx asks how much he owes her.
She notes her own wealth as a noble.
Onyx is confused by her sudden request. Minuet asks for a ride to the shop. He suspects her of seeking public attention.
Onyx resolves to resist her clever tactics.
He finds the request excessive for a flower pot.
Minuet demands his time in exchange for hers.
She clutches a gift box with a smile.
Minuet leaves after concluding her business.
She tells the shopkeeper not to trouble himself. The town market is full of activity.
Minuet finds the town market very interesting. She argues that nobles needn't be idle.
Onyx acknowledges her progressive and hardworking nature.
He realizes she isn't seeking cheap gossip. They walk together through the busy marketplace.
Onyx continues to question her ultimate goal.
Minuet suggests he buy her lunch next.
Onyx anticipates her next move at a restaurant.
He agrees to treat her to a meal.
The prince feels manipulated yet again.
Onyx leads her toward a local restaurant.
A sudden thump sounds as he stares at her.
Minuet eats her dessert with pure delight.
Onyx teases her about her healthy appetite.
Minuet expresses her love for discovering new foods.
She compares the experience to traveling abroad.
Onyx is puzzled by her talk of travel.
He admits that he doesn't enjoy eating.
Minuet is horrified by his lack of enjoyment.
Onyx asks what else brings him joy. Minuet explains that there are many fun things in life, such as eating delicious food and buying pretty items for herself.
Onyx observes that she sounds like a frivolous count's daughter, a role Minuet cheerfully embraces by stating that living as a lady of the Levine family has been her greatest joy so far.
The prince sips his tea and dryly remarks on the nature of her unearned income as his gaze sharpens with silent scrutiny.
A sharp clink sounds as Onyx sets his cup down, wondering how much further she intends to take this charade now that he is playing along.
Onyx asks if her rejection of the proposal was because the imperial family is penniless, inwardly scoffing at what he considers a pathetic inferiority complex.
Minuet stammers in response, appearing visibly flustered by his direct line of questioning.
As they sit amid a spread of desserts, Onyx notes her obvious expression in front of the man who proposed, while Minuet feels it is a bit ridiculous to say such things to someone she has only just met.
Looking across the table, Minuet questions whether the current path they are on is fundamentally wrong. When Onyx asks for clarification, Minuet rests her chin on her hand and confesses that she doesn't think it is right to spend a second life without love, revealing that this was her true reason for rejecting the proposal.
Onyx's eyes narrow in cynical disbelief as he scoffs at the idea of love, thinking that even the horses in the stables would find such a sentiment laughable.
The prince concludes that she must have carefully calculated the finances and status of every family before speaking, ultimately that she is a very interesting lady.